We're live now.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name's Doug Chipman. I'm Mayor of the City of Clarence. Welcome to this special council meeting tonight to deal with a planning matter. Before proceeding, I'd ask that you join me in the council prayer. Almighty God, we humbly beseech thee to vouchsafe thy blessing upon this council. Direct and prosper its deliberations to the advancement of thy glory and the true welfare of the people of the City of Clarence. Amen.
Amen.
I'd like to acknowledge the Tasmanian Aboriginal community as the traditional custodians of this land in which we meet tonight, and pay respect to elders past and present. I note that declare the meeting formally open and note that there are no apologies. We are meeting electronically. The meeting's being streamed by YouTube and will be available on Council's website later this week. And voting will occur electronically via the chat bar on the side of your screen. Moving on to item 3, are there any declarations of interest from Alderman or close associate? There being none, moving on to item 3.1, which is a development application for land at the junction of the Tasman Highway, Holloman Avenue, Kennedy Drive and Cranston Parade for the Hobart International Airport interchange. In accordance with our planning meeting procedures, we will have some deputations tonight before I call and open the debate. Unlike our normal planning authority meetings, we won't be able to ask questions of the deputies. But I'd ask General Manager to read out our 2 deputations I think we have.
Thank you, Mayor. The first deputation is from the Department of State Growth, and it is in the form of a letter to me from Mr. Gary Swain, who is the Deputy Secretary Transport Services for DSG. Mr. Swain writes, I write in regard to the planning application submitted by Hazel Brothers for the Hobart Airport Interchange project and to update Council on recent discussions between the Department of State Growth and the proponents of the industrial and commercial development at 51 Cranston Parade. The department has been meeting regularly with the proponents over the past 2 months to progress agreement on a higher profile access to the property at Cranston Parade than the one that was provided for in the interchange design currently before Council, in recognition of the significant opportunity and economic potential the development would deliver for Clarence. At our most recent meeting with the proponents, we agreed in principle on access to be provided to the property on a cost share basis and with the time frame for construction of the access to be delivered as part of the Hobart Airport Interchange project. The agreed design for the access to Cranston Parade includes both direct access from the interchange and from the westbound on-ramp. Noting that our discussions with the proponent continue to be constructive, we are optimistic of finalising the design and agreement between the department and the proponent over the coming weeks. It is anticipated that separate development applications will be submitted to Council later this year for consideration consistent with any agreement reached. Yours sincerely. The second deputation comes from Ms. Emma Riley on behalf of the proponents of the land at 51 Cranston Parade. Ms. Riley writes, our clients intend to redevelop 51 Cranston Parade as an industrial business park in accordance with the current planning scheme. A concept master plan for the site is provided separately to demonstrate the development potential of the site. The capacity of the proposed interchange is inadequate and jeopardises future industrial development approvals. Cardno for the applicant have not considered any activation of the current zoned land based on current scheme provisions. This is a significant oversight. The use of the 28 employee per hectare calculation is inappropriate. The RTA guideline states that section 3.10.1 relating to factories, if the number of employees is not known, estimates can be made from the size of the proposed floor area. if the proposed floor area is not known, such as when strategic planning is being undertaken for large industrial estates, an indicative figure of 28 employees per developed hectare could be assumed. This RTA approach relates to factories, not the light industrial use that would be expected under the Cranston Parade specific area plan. The provided indicative floor areas and this according to the RTA should be preferred. Our calculations are based on floor area rates under the RTA. This DA is also not a strategic planning exercise. The former design incorporated a two-way service road which provided access to the Cranston Parade site, where the current design provides no connection point. The capacity of the current design to accommodate unexpected traffic volumes is also limited as compared to the previous approved design due to the use of roundabouts compared to controlled intersections. Access onto the Tasman Highway does not meet the planning scheme requirements around safety and efficiency, having regard to the likely growth in traffic volumes over the next 20 years. No provision for servicing conduits under the highway has been made. This is essential for future activation of the Cranston Parade Industrial Estate and should at least be dealt with by way of condition if this application is approved. Those two deputations were circulated to Alderman this afternoon via email and included the attachment that Ms Riley references within her deputation. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, GM. You might clarify for all of us the letter from the Secretary that refers to negotiations. To what extent would that overtake the representation made in regard to this application?
I'm not entirely sure I understand the question, Mayor.
Well, we've got a lot of issues that have been raised in the representation in regard to the property on Cranston's Parade. To what extent are they being addressed in the negotiations with the department?
Right, thank you for clarifying, Mayor. My understanding through my conversation with Mr Swain and his staff is that those are the issues that are being dealt with, but I can't say to a complete extent that the parties are in agreement. As I understand things, the discussions are ongoing, but Mr Swain has indicated that he is happy to progress any agreed position between the parties through another DA later on that can be in addition to the current one being considered tonight.
Thank you. Alderman Blomeley.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. Just further to your question, Mr Mayor, if the General Manager could answer, please, the date of Ms Riley's deputation. I note that Mr Swain's is dated Friday the 10th. Do we know, or can you advise when Ms Riley's deputation was received?
Ms Riley's deputation was received late this afternoon, Alderman Blomeley.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Okay, in that case, I'll move to the report. The recommendation is for approval, subject to conditions and advice. Do I have a mover and a seconder, please? That's moved. Alderman Blomeley, I take it. The officer's recommendation?
Yes, Mr Mayor.
Okay. Do I have a seconder, please? Alderman Ewington, seconder. Thank you. Alderman Blomeley, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. And we're all very well aware of the development application for us this evening. It's, in my view, a first-rate application which will establish the Hobart International Airport interchange, or what's colloquially known as a Hobart roundabout. This revised plan before us this evening has two roundabouts that will provide access to Kennedy Drive and Hollyman Avenue that underpass a bridge on the Tasman Highway. The design before us this evening, the revised design with large input by Hazel Brothers, involves the construction of a new grade separated interchange with a peanut-shaped roundabout controlling traffic flow along the Tasman Highway off-ramps, Kennedy Drive, Hollywood Avenue and Cranston Parade. What is a win for all taxpayers, Mr Mayor, is that the application for us tonight, with input by the successful tenderers Hazel Brothers, is delivering a less expensive and better engineered solution that will, we're advised, deliver a superior traffic management system that what we currently have or what was previously suggested or proposed. It is pleasing to see that the tenderer, the successful developers, Hazel Brothers, have worked so constructively with the state government to revise the original plans and deliver an enhanced solution with a less expensive price tag attached. The letter of the deputation from Mr Gary Swain, the Deputy Secretary of Transport Services of the Department of State Growth, State Roads Division, the General Manager read it earlier tonight, noted that the discussions with the proponents of 51 Cranston Parade continue to be constructive, and the DSG are optimistic of finalising the design and agreement between the department and the proponent, the owners of 51 Cranston Parade, over coming weeks. That's the most recent advice we've received from DSG. And as a result, Mr Swain acknowledges that, that he anticipates as a result of those discussions that this council will then consider separate DAs consistent with any agreement reached with the proponents of 51 Cranston Parade. So, Mr Mayor, with those few words, this is a win-win for all Tasmanians. It opens up the gateway to our international airport and will relieve to a large degree the commuter time for southeastern residents, and will address obviously some of the Tasman Highway traffic congestion issues and enable easier access, as I say, to Tasmania's main gateway, the Hobart International Airport. And I urge colleagues, Mr Mayor, to support the motion for the Chair.
Thank you, Alderman Blomeley. Alderman Ewington.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, I mean, look, I think it's great that we've finally got around to having this in front of us. It's been something that's been talked about for a long time. And I mean, I know there's some other aldermen may bring up some issues in relation to whether this solves the whole problem all the way through to the city. And no, it probably doesn't. But regardless of what happens with the rest of the studies that are done and work that's done at the Tasman Bridge, and whether we look at, you know, Flagstaff Gully Link roads or anything else that comes along, at the end of the day, we know we need to have an interchange at the airport that's suitable for, you know, the volume of traffic coming in and out of there, and also the traffic that we know comes through from Sorrel and you know further out suburbs. I was concerned about the access to the industrial land. It's good to see that that's been dealt with, and I'm sure that you know that will be worked through, because I know there's a lot of potential for that to be a big part of the whole Antarctic servicing industry, I suppose, is one way of describing it, and I think that's going to be a something that'll be a big part of what happens down at the airport over future years. The only thing we need to worry about is whether we actually get to fly again. So hopefully, if we get this started, that's part of the step of the way to getting everything else sorted. And you know, I encourage everyone else to support this so that we can get on and get a critical piece of infrastructure built to benefit the whole of Tasmania, essentially.
Thanks, Alderman Ewington. Alderman Mulder.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm not in favour of the current design, and although I realise that sooner or later we really have to bite the bullet, and I would rather that it was sooner, and I would rather that it was several years ago when this was first mooted. The problem is the design. There is no provision for existing connections along which are currently on the Tasman Highway, and as well as the one by the landowner, who has provided a traffic impact statement assessment, and there's a lot of mention there about clause E.5.6.2 and performance criteria 1. This talks about the need for safe access for the various landowners along that point. We also have other accesses, currently accesses, which are at Pittwater Road, the Golf Club and the Oyster Restaurant. Now, I know they're outside the scope of this particular project, but they are important parts of this development. the other development, and the solution for those areas is, rather than plonking another roundabout, replacing one congestion-causing roundabout, 200 metres up the road, we're going to put another one in so that people can access the Pittwater Road, the golf club, and the oyster restaurant. The solution to these things are slip roads, a parallel road coming back to Holloman Drive and to Kennedy Drive. On numerous occasions, we have asked, and in fact we have passed a motion by this council requesting the Department of State Growth for information about the traffic congestion and what they plan to do. Now, although it's not part of this project, they have not answered those questions, and neither have they given any thought, because this is this project and it's funded by the federal government. It's an election commitment. Then you've got the project down the road, which is a state government project of the connection with Pittwater Road, because that's a state government project. And here we have the state government is managing both projects, but can't integrate them in the way that they ought to be to avoid this particular traffic suggestion. Now, the plan is to replace one congestion-causing roundabout with another, and we need that, and that's needed. Mr Mayor, should this motion not succeed, I'll foreshadow a motion of refusal based on clause E5.6.2 performance criteria 1, for the reasons that the design needs to be altered to accommodate for current and future connections to the Tasman Highway.
Thanks, Alderman Mulder. Other speakers, please. Alderman James.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I was hoping that there would be a representative from the department this evening, and I thought that this project was a special DA in the sense that the cost of it was exceeding our benchmark, and therefore we had an opportunity to ask some questions of the experts. But look, that seems to have been denied, and unfortunately...
Alderman James, just a point of clarification there. We are meeting as a planning authority as required. It's just the opportunity to ask questions of the representatives isn't there for COVID reasons. So that's where we're in the space. We are meeting as a planning authority, though.
Yes, I know, Mr Mayor. I don't debate this, but we've had other experts, particularly the proponents, and we could have asked questions in relation to that. I know my timing is now underway, so look, I just would like to record my concern in relation to that. There are two issues that I'm concerned about, and that is in relation to attachment 5. And I spoke with Ross Lovell today in relation to this, and it appears that there will be significant stormwater discharge into the southern area of the actual project, and that I think has already been spoken about in the letters or in those representatives' comments in the early part of the meeting. And it's quite clear that the stormwater discharge following the development will not disagrees that the development that the stormwater will in fact increase, and there will be an increase in stormwater runoff, particularly in the impact on the neighbouring landowners. And in attachment 5, it shows quite clearly those red areas, in fact, where what was dry now but will be wet as a result, and that's in the southern part of the on the diagram on attachment 5. So that it seems to be in conflict with Cardno's report, and they've acknowledged that there will be discharge and that will be contained in the southern part of the area, and that is quite clearly on adjoining properties. The other matter that is of concern is in relation to the traffic, and we currently have some concerns in relation to the domino effect it will have on other parts of the city. And it's been said that the increase in traffic volume is currently only considered as minor, but potentially may grow during construction of the development if an adequate arrangement cannot be provided by DSG during construction. Nevertheless, the impact it will have on other parts of the city, in particular in relation to Richmond, it hasn't been considered, but I believe it ought to be considered, and that has been addressed by one of the representatives who has drawn council's attention to the fact that there is some contradiction between the two planners, the two traffic engineers, and it doesn't seem to be any indication as to which of those is correct, notwithstanding that both the professional planners for the professional engineer, for the planner, and the one for the applicant are at loggerheads, and it just doesn't seem to gel. And I believe it doesn't actually indicate that there will be additional traffic movements on the periphery in relation to this development. So, in fact, it's very easy to say, Mr. Mayor, that another development application will iron out a lot of these situations with relation to the representatives. But we are dealing with a major project now, and it's important that, in fact, there be some agreement in this first instance, rather than try to rectify, which I think would be extremely difficult to do in the circumstances once this DA goes through with the conditions that's been applied. I believe that the representatives have made a point, and for those reasons, I will not support the recommendation.
Thanks, Alderman James. Do I have any other speakers? Alderman Pearce.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm a bit like Alderman James. I'm disappointed that someone who was not here, some representative, that we could ask a few questions to get a few things clarified. One of the things I noticed, and I thank Alderman James for raising the points on, water and where it's going to lie and all that on attachment 5, because I was looking at the same thing and I had notes on that myself. But I don't know if Mr. Milton can tell me the proposed hours of work. I mean, this is going to take a long time. If it's just an 8 to 4 job, it's going to take 20 years. So have we got any idea what the hours are going to be?
Mr. Milton, are you able to help us in that regard?
Yes, they propose to construct it during normal working hours. Are they going to, I think it's 2 years, 2022 is when they're proposing to open it. So they're giving themselves a significant amount of time. They have to have it opened as part of their agreement. So I hope that's what you're.
Thanks, Mr. Milton. Yeah, Alderman Pearce, if you wish to continue.
No, it's not really. I would have liked them to work longer, but anyway, because it's going to take forever. I just had something on storm water, which I marked, but I just cannot find at the moment. Look, I'm not happy with design, but I'm not an engineer, so I'm not going to go through and say I could do it better, because that's not the case. Our sewage management. Now, I imagine we're happy with that, because I know that, stormwater management, I should say. I can see we're happy with that, but I thought the Kano report does raise some interesting points there, so I certainly hope that's spot on and we get that right. All right, thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Other speakers? Alderman Edmunds.
Thank you. Just a little bit confused about the deputations, and I know that unfortunately there's no one here who can answer my questions about it. So I just wanted to say out loud that I don't like this sort of she'll be right aspect of giving an approval and then but don't worry, we'll work with the concerned party to get that sorted out. I'd really would have appreciated if if people could sniff the breeze that this was coming to us, and obviously we only got the deputations this afternoon, that there could be someone here who we could pin down on that, because that's what happened with Rosny Hill. You know, we were able to put some things and get some things said out loud at that meeting by proponents, so they could be held to it down the track. And that was something that, you know, was a difficult decision for a lot of us, and something that I voted in favour of. I get really nervous when I see comments that are one's made, what is it, late last week, saying that, you know, we'll work hard, and I don't doubt the approach of the department to get that done. And you know, I really don't. This is not something I want to stay in the road of. I think Alderman Mulder made some comments about that as well. You know, years ago, it should have been something to looked at. But I get, you know, it does scare the horses when you see comments like, you know, we'll sort this out with another DA down the track. Well, why can't we just get all in one DA and have postponed this meeting? It's hard to take something at face value when you can't grill the person. I understand that that's COVID and that's what's caused for us. However, I think extra effort could have perhaps been made by the representatives to have been able to come along, because these are the questions that we probably could have seen coming a mile out. And honestly, I'm probably leaning towards abstaining in this vote based on that and some of the extra information we've got this evening.
Thanks, Alderman Edmunds. I do need to clarify that our normal council meetings don't provide for us to be able to ask questions of the representatives. We do, of course, attempt to do so at a planning authority meeting. So it's not as if we're outside our normal space for decision making here, except in terms of the dollar threshold. Mr. Nelson, have you got a comment there? Muted. You are muted, General Manager.
Mr. Mayor, I did have my hand up.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll take the point of clarification from the General Manager first, then come back to you, Alderman Kennedy.
Thank you, Mayor. I had two points of clarification. The first related to the deputations tonight. Actively, that was essentially my decision in terms of the ability for people to join the meeting and do that effectively. That may have, in hindsight, been the wrong call, but it's not appropriate to put that back on the proponents. That's my decision. The second issue is that in the context of the Cranston Parade land, it's important to note that there, as far as I'm aware, there isn't an active proposal in respect to that land. It's been under consideration for industrial development for quite some time. So while others may disagree, there is also a point of view that this isn't a locked-in proposal with definite development parameters at this point in time. And in that context, I understand that is how DSG has been approaching their discussion, to make sure that when there is a definite proposal, that the arrangements are in place to respond effectively to that.
Thanks, General Manager. Alderman Kennedy.
Oh, thank you, General Manager, for clarifying that, because that is a concern to me, and following on from Alderman Edmunds' comments, to receive that deputation this afternoon, and obviously Council only received it earlier, but I still have some concerns, because yes, this is a major project that we would like to get moving fairly soon, but there's still quite a few questions that I'd like answered. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Alderman Walker.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's not a make work project. It's a project that's been in design for a very long time, because the area has a problem now, had a problem in the past, and yeah, passenger transport is down with airports presently. I'm hopeful that it will bounce back and more and go back to the previous projections. But even if that growth rate is impaired, freight is going to be on the up. There's absolutely no doubt about that. And we are blessed to have the airport in our municipality. It is a big economic generator, a big activity generator, And this is needed infrastructure. It's infrastructure that the feds are chipping in for. And, you know, it's not our project, and I'm not a traffic engineer, and I look at it and it's probably not what I would have done, but I really shouldn't be designing these sort of projects. I take the advice that's gone through, that the rigors occurred to it. But ask yourself, what's the ramifications of rejection? What might happen at another level? Now, we're not meant to second guess that, but it's Fed funding. Maybe they might prefer to do a similar roundabout or flyover for Launceston Airport. And the problem won't go away, and it'll have to be addressed some other way. But there's still going to be growth in the Sorrel corridor, and there's still going to be that activity that I've highlighted. So I will be voting for it, and I certainly hope that there's 6 others along with me, because the ramifications of not doing it, to me, are pretty stark. And I'd like people to reflect on that. I don't wipe or dismiss the concerns around, you know, impairment of industrial land along Cranston Parade. This whole area is a strategic industrial site, and I give kudos to council for looking at that in the past. Our legacy around industrial land zoning is a bit patchy, and I'd certainly highlight council's shortcomings around the zoning of industrial land around Risdon Vale. But this is an area where we got it right, and the market have seen it, and with the proximity to the airport, it's really important. And I'd just make this point: the issue around Cranston Parade, that wasn't even on the radar of DSG when we were talking about this several years ago. It is at the very least on the radar, and it's certainly on our radar. And I'd just ask you all to reflect on these matters as you come to make your vote.
Thanks, Alderman Walker. Any other speakers? The right to reply, Alderman Blomeley.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, I'd like to thank colleagues for their contributions this evening. I wasn't going to use the opportunity to have the right to reply, except there is just one item that came up very early on in the debate, and that is that one of our colleagues suggests that Pittwater Road is being proposed as a roundabout. Just to be very clear, Mr Mayor, it's an intersection with lights. That's what the design shows at the moment. So I think it's important that we do stick to the facts here. I think the arguments were well put, particularly by Alderman Walker, and I congratulate him for his contribution this evening and thank him for that. So those few words, Mr Mayor, I just urge colleagues to get in behind this motion and support this DA.
Thank you. Could I have a voting box, please, GM?
It's up now, Mayor.
Thank you.
Mr Mayor, I don't seem to...
If you're not able to vote, I'll take it orally, Alderman Mulder.
I'm sorry, no, I've just seen it come up at 3.1. It would really be helpful if we actually had the, you know, okay.
One vote to go. The motion is carried 10-2. At that, I'll declare the special council meeting closed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.